For those of us who live and breathe crypto, Bitwise is a name you want to know. They've been in the game since 2017 and now manage over 10 billion in crypto assets across 30 different solutions. Index funds, Bitcoin and crypto, equity ETFs, on-chain solutions, you name it, Bitwise does it. But here's what I really recommend checking out. Their weekly CIO memo. Every week, CIO Matt Hogan breaks down what's happening in crypto, like why Bitcoin's up or down, what the big institutions are doing, and the stories flying under the radar. It's sharp, it's free, and honestly, it's one of the best reads in crypto. Find it at bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo. Again, bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo.
Binance is the world's #1 crypto exchange. Over 275 million users already trust their world-class security. Binance makes starting crypto as simple as it should be. Whether learning about crypto on Binance Academy or browsing hundreds of assets and viewing your newly created portfolio in a clear, easy-to-track dashboard, Binance helps you go at your own pace. For the hardcore traders, Binance Pro opens industry-leading services for trading professionals with fully bespoke trading products along with a suite of white-glove services for VIP and institutional clients. Need support? 24/7 customer service is on hand whenever you need it. And with some of the lowest fees and deepest liquidity in the market, it's no surprise over 285 million users trust Binance for everything crypto. Download Binance today and get started in minutes. Binance is not available in certain countries, including the U.S. Check its terms for more.
Hello, everyone. We're back again on a Friday, and the market is dumping once again. It's been a theme of this year that REKT Vision would happen just as the market appears to be rolling over. But we're all going to be positive here. We brought in Ejaaz, who mainly has been looking at AI, so he's feeling great. All of those stocks seem to hit all-time highs. And he's glad he left quite a lot of crypto behind. But thanks for coming on, Ejaaz. Really good to have you back.
Thanks for having me. Super pumped to do this.
So we were live last week. We actually just did the show with OSF, the drink show, and the market was kind of selling off. I think Bitcoin was like 118K. And then we had the largest liquidation candle ever. By conservative estimates, it was about $19 to $20 billion of liquidations, although Binance doesn't report all of its liquidation data. So people think it was closer to $30 to $40 billion. Seemingly, it was a mixture of a few things, some tariff headlines, and then what seemingly was like a bit of an attack vector on Athena's stablecoin, which on Binance wasn't hard-coded at one, alongside a couple of other assets, and that caused this wave of liquidations. A bunch of market makers got wiped out in the process. Hyperliquid was auto-deleveraging people, which meant that some people got stopped out way too early on certain things, and it was just an all-around mess. But I've never seen anything like it. I was up it was 10 p.m. local time for me when it was all happening, and I was in front of my desk at the time, so I was a little bit lucky. But how did you fare during all that period?
I also happened to be on my computer, on my laptop at that time, and it happened in just under 20 minutes, Mando. I was looking at a bunch of positions, and I was like, oh, wow, this red candle looks terrible. Don't worry. Check back 2 minutes later, and I was like, "Oh, right, okay, my life is in the gutter right now." That is absolutely insane. Listen, liquidations isn't anything new. Liquidation cascades isn't anything new to crypto. I think this one shocked for a few reasons. Number one, we hadn't seen one in a while. I think since what was it, the April lows, we've just been in an up only, particularly BTC, right, which was like the first to recover, the strongest to recover. The second thing is it was the largest cascade ever, I think. Well, maybe since COVID, maybe it was comparable, but it was such a large liquidation. Like you said, 30 to 40 billion, I think, is closer to the real number. And then number three is by this time, you'd expect to see some sort of a dead body float to the top of the water, but we haven't, which I think puts a lot of people on edge because in the absence of no news, everyone likes to create their own theories and starts to believe their own dribble. And that's what we're seeing on the timeline today, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I heard originally were some liquid token funds and some market makers. The one it made most sense for was for any sort of long short book. I think could have been really badly damaged there, of which a lot of funds kind of are. They promise almost like a delta neutral style return where they'll have a basket of shorts, basket of longs, and in that sort of a world, just to put into perspective, Sui, which everyone's kind of familiar with on this show, was trading at 35 billion. I remember looking at it live, and it was trading at 5 billion. This is the perp contract, and I was just like, what is going on here? This is a top 20 coin that is down 80%, and I just couldn't believe it. That was across the board.
The books were empty, right?
Yeah,
that was the biggest revelation. Like, we all thought that these coins, well, maybe not the low cap alts, but some of these stronger coins like Sui had bids all the way down to zero. And what we found out was that was just not the case. And so in some cases, like with Atom, it just literally wicked to zero for a millisecond, but it liquidated pretty much everyone. There were people that I was in contact with after Mando that was on, I think it was like 1.3 leverage. And listen, whatever your opinion on leverage, 1.3 leverage is not really leverage, right? It's typically a conservative way to play the thing. They got liquidated. So it's unlike anything we've ever seen. One thing I will say, though, because I think it's easy to argue the bear case for all of this, I just want to point like two things out. Number one, decentralized finance, aside from, some ADL systems kind of maybe didn't work in your favor. In my opinion, it's kind of subjective. The bear case, I've seen people's takes on that. It worked beautifully. Like most perps platforms, decentralized perps platforms actually outperformed the centralized ones. So I think we've come a long way since the days of like, the stable coins lost its peg and now everything's like, being destroyed. I want to point that thing out. And secondly, I think the markets are for some of these major assets are a lot more liquid than we originally thought. I'm talking about the BTCs, the Solanas, the ETHs, which comparatively haven't taken that big a hit as we'd expect. So this is very much a progress since we last had a major cascade like this.
I think that's fair. Hyperliquid did get criticized for some. They did like an auto deleveraging, and some of the prices there were not great for some of the assets, but they were also at pretty extreme prices for some of the majors like Bitcoin. But Hyperliquid didn't go down. And I think a lot of people, and if you look at what the original source of this was, a lot of people point to this Binance level for, or the way it uses internal Oracle for USDE rather than various external ones, which was kind of exploited. It was something they were looking to patch anyway, but it seemingly was exploited at that exact time.
It happened in the week that they were meant to patch it up. They announced it and they were like, we're going to patch this up in a week's time. And whoever the actor was decided to take advantage. Yeah. And I'll give you the different camps of thought, right? So you mentioned the gold thing. Gold is at all-time highs, which I agree with you, signals that the debasement trade is happening, right? People have lost faith in the government, in the systems, in the currency that they're holding. I would actually argue this is really good for crypto. I tweeted about this last night because it's what we've known all along, right? That a lot of these currency systems are just kind of giant Ponzi's, and BTC will, or some other type of crypto asset will likely kind of take the helm. But the mistake that a lot of people made was assuming that everyone outside of the 10,000 schizo crypto influencers on a little crypto Twitter believes that Bitcoin is true digital gold. No, that's going to take time. And so it makes sense for gold to pump first or to pump more before BTC does. I was thinking about this. It's like gold is to BTC what BTC is to alts. Everyone's like, oh, BTC must run first and then alts will pump. It's kind of a similar thing happening here. Maybe that's an optimistic take, but I personally think it's the right take. Now, on equities and the stock market in general, like you said, it's at all-time highs. Oh, it's a minor bounce. Like, okay, what, a 2%, 3% bounce? I don't really care about, right? That's not a dump by any means. Also, to be frank, the entire stock market is propped up on 7 companies, right? The Mag 7. But what props those companies up? as you alluded to, it is all the AI stuff. Let's not kid around here, right? And if you want to go super doomer about this, it's like it's one company, it's NVIDIA. How is NVIDIA supported? Oh, it's just one semiconductor manufacturer in Taiwan. Oh my God, what if China takes over Taiwan? That's why, everyone's reacting so viscerally to Trump and China doing these trade war tariffs types thing. Here's my take on all the AI side of things. Everyone's doomer take right now is people are spending way too much money on AI and there's nothing to show for it. I actually argue the opposite. I think there is not enough money and time being invested in AI, and we need to double or triple it if we want to compete at any major level. And so I assume that we'll see a lot of stocks, presuming they're still residing on AI growth, to keep going up.
Interesting. So you think concentration only goes higher from here for the Mag 7?
Yep.
I mean, it's definitely been the trend. It's definitely been the trend. And if you actually take it to the end of these technologies, you do feel like if they're spending this much money, you've got to assume that they're going to get AGI. And then, I mean, you can go into any sort of field.
I just want to caveat what I'm saying with, because what I'm saying sounds crazy, right? It's like, what are you talking about? Like you're betting on like the top 7 companies becoming even more powerful. Like how? Like one's a social media company, one makes electric cars. Like, what are you talking about? Think about the technology that I'm referencing here, right? The point is like AI or AGI, whatever the hell you want to call it, is going to affect every single type of industry. Oh no, what about science? What about pharmaceuticals? Well, an AI model this week found a potential cure for cancer. Well, like, what's AI got any business doing in that industry, right? The fact is, the technology can scale all these different companies out, all these different industries out. And so the companies that are building that tech from the foundation layer, from the data layer, from the compute layer, are the ones that are going to control all the power. And as long as they're making advancements there, you'll see the rest of the stock market go up, in my opinion, which is what we've been seeing.
Maybe we'll touch upon just a little bit early that as well, because you're starting to see maybe the beginnings of that with the use cases. This week, Google came out and basically said we may have found a cure for cancer, it seemed like, of which we've seen a few different times. Obviously, they've been some of their models have been at the forefront of some of the recent breakthroughs when it comes to DNA and various other forms of medical research. But it does feel as though maybe this is the sort of stuff we're going to start to see more and more in the coming weeks. You may want to go into it a little bit.
Sure. So that headline you referenced was one of Google's AI models this week came out with a novel hypothesis. For any of you who know even kind of like the basics around the disease cancer, it kind of happens because your own body's immune system is unable to detect the cancer in the first place. It kind of goes under the radar, right? They're known as cold tumors, cold. And so what this AI model did was it looked at all the research, it looked at a bunch of scientific data, it looked at a bunch of DNA, and it identified this compound, this protein. It's called silmatercept, right? This protein. And it noted that if you made more of this protein, it would act as a trigger to your immune system to be like, hey, look, there's a tumor here. Like immune system, you need to deal with this. And scientists already knew about this protein. So they were like, this is novel. But what the AI model prompted them further was, no, what you don't realize is this protein makes other proteins come available, which you weren't even aware of. And the scientists were like, this might be bullshit, but let me test it out. And they ran a study and ended up finding a bunch of preclinical trials that would suggest that this would now start like curing cancer from the immune system level, which is insane. Never been discovered before. No scientists even hypothecated about it. So these are just kind of like minor big steps that will kind of push the medical and scientific industry at large. We're seeing this sort of similar development in coding, in maths. There are breakthroughs made every week, but no one knows about it because they're super niche to start off with, right? So the wider point I want to make around this is I think the majority of people, when they think of AI, they think of ChatGPT and they think, it's a chatbot. Well, yeah, sometimes I can use it as a therapist. Sometimes I can use it as a coach. What they don't see is all the other niche industries that these AI models are also playing ball in, and they are like top ballers. They're doing like really cool things. You just don't hear about it because you're not like necessarily plugged in. I'm not plugged into every industry. I got to read about all of this kind of stuff. But we are making like huge leaps. People just don't see it. It hasn't drifted down.
Yeah, that's what I'm starting to see too. And it's just that of that example you said the concentration goes up. Like if suddenly Google can move laterally into medicine, I mean, obviously it's obviously not creating the medicine itself, but like you can suddenly start to see that these companies can go pretty laterally into a lot of different industries, particularly ones which focus on research. I would guess deep reasoning would be the obvious ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also wanted to point out there's a number on your screen that you're showing right now, which says 27 billion parameter model. For anyone that knows anything about that, that is a tiny model. And remember, the hypothesis a year ago by Sam Altman was like, oh no, you need the model to be large. You need a lot of compute. So not only have we increased the intelligence per watt of energy per model, but you've also reduced the cost. It's just insane.
Yeah, this is the things. I can get all the circular sort of investment sort of stuff, which has been coming up recently, I think has got some fair critique to it. But it is one of these sort of things where like the most bearish thing for me is just like some sort of black swan that takes everyone out. I just don't see these trends. And I think the same for crypto. Like even now everyone's getting bared up and, like, oh, it's completely over. I just get the feeling that like in any dip, you're just going to have bars of these sort of technologies because all this sort of stuff, because there's just long-term trends behind them. I think AI is for sure, but it's going to be very strange to see with like the debasement trade if crypto really does trip up here too. Let's go into a little bit more of the AI stuff, because I think it has been interesting, even though the market's not doing too well. This stuff has also been very, very interesting. Sure. OpenAI has a lot of headlines around over the last few weeks. They did a deal with AMD. They're talking about making their own chips. They're talking about doing kind of ChatGPT for adults. Maybe give us a little bit of a rundown of what's been going on in OpenAI.
Okay, so what I'm about to tell you is my opinion. People will have different takes, but this is how I see the lay of the land. OpenAI is at the front. It's number one. It's at the lead, and it's for a number of different reasons. They have the number one most addictive / useful ChatGPT models, or like chatbot models. Number two, the model's smart enough to make breakthroughs in coding, which is what a lot of software engineers care about. So, I think something like 50% of the code that is written at OpenAI is done by their Codex agent, their coding agent, which is just an insane number for like one of the leading companies that are building out this technology, right? Money where their mouth is. And then number two, they are probably pursuing the most aggressive strategy ever to scale compute. You referenced it. They did a deal with Jensen Huang at NVIDIA, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago. It's all a blur at this moment, for about $100 billion worth of compute over the next couple of years. They signed it with AMD, who the CEO happens to be Jensen's cousin, by the way. They did a partnership with him. And then this week, they announced a partnership with Broadcom, saying that OpenAI is going to design their own chips, their own GPUs. So technically going into competition with NVIDIA and with AMD. And in total, with all these different partnerships, OpenAI has agreed to basically build around 26 gigawatts of energy. That is a huge amount of energy. It's like multiple times the amount that fairly large nations have themselves, right? And the point around this is there's a widespread scramble for the West to build as much energy that they can compute so that they can build smarter, more intelligent models. And a lot of people think that it's just for intelligence. It's like, oh yeah, so we can get an AGI. But what they don't realize is the smarter these models get, the more people are going to use them. The more people use them, the more compute you need, right? I'll give you a simple example. OpenAI released their latest text-to-video model called Sora 2. And it's in the form of their own social media app. It's like TikTok, but every video is AI generated. That almost took down their entire server, right? And that's crazy. Like that includes ChatGPT. So the point around this is I think Sam is pursuing a very aggressive strategy around spending to bring up compute so that he can train better models. A lot of people are saying this spending is too much and that he's got nothing to show for it. I actually think the opposite. I think he sees plenty of use cases and he fears that there's not enough compute currently for them. And when you weigh up that 26 gigawatt number, which is just for OpenAI, comparing it to how much gigawatts of power China has, which is, I think, 300 plus, the West is falling behind massively. So they need to scale up.
Sorry about that again. I don't know what's going on with me at the moment. Yeah, I watched your take on the US versus China. It does seem like that is going to be the battle for the ages here. It seems like China's ahead on certain things, including like robotics, but the US, and this is kind of what this battle is. Like this is kind of what's causing the global volatility at the moment, I think, as well. Like they're both making moves to try and hurt each other's supply chains when it comes to this, either in chips or in rare metals, and that's, I mean, the prize is so massive that I think this is going to be with us for a while. Like I know Trump is trying to walk down some of his rhetoric, but this feels like the sort of time where it is going to be us versus them. And given the implications to things like defense and just broader industrial complex for both economies, you can't really drop the ball.
No, it's existential. So the way I distill all this AI stuff, all this stock stuff, all this tariff stuff, all this regulation around Trump trying to bring all manufacturing for energy vehicles, energy, all that kind of stuff onshore, it's America's Hail Mary against China, because China, for God knows how long, has all the essential resources that they have. The tariff that China is trying to put against the US right now is against rare minerals. You kind of need those rare minerals to power a lot of the devices that we have, right? That's why it's so crucial. That's why people are freaking out. China has the most robots. Does that sound like a ridiculous sentence to you? For you listening, robots aren't real. No, they're very much real, and they'll be coming to you in probably under 5 years at this point. So what happens in a world like that when China has created 300,000 robots in 2024 and the US created 34,000, right? Okay, what happens then? What happens when a lot of the AI researchers reside in China? Currently, it's around 50% of the world's top AI researchers are in China. They're coming out of Tsinghua University, if you want the specifics, right? What happens if they have all the energy? They currently lead us in that. So then people are saying, well, okay, America makes better models. Kind of true, but you have a bunch of open source models that come out of China at this point every other week, and they're as good as American models. So this isn't a minute threat, and I don't want to sound hyperbolic or exaggerated, but it is America's last Hail Mary to push us forward and keep us in the lead.
One thing I've noticed with every single one of these deals is they're often, the benchmark for them is often, it's in cost, but it's also in power. Everything seems to be spoken about in terms of megawatts or gigawatts.
Intelligence per watt. Yep.
Yeah. Can we go into that a little bit, like where they both are in terms of power as well? I know China's obviously made huge investments into things like solar over the last 10 to 20 years. But on that alone, like, I know America's also got a lot of energy independence and has a huge amount of power. Is that going to be a limiting factor for either of these guys?
In the short term, yeah. Because so here's how it looks on both sides. China has all the energy, but their models kind of suck. I'm exaggerating here to make the point. Kind of suck compared to the American ones. The American models have all the intelligence, but their compute sucks. So that's why you end up having really cool features from OpenAI, but they're only available to the $200 plus pro users, right? Not everyone can use it. On the Chinese side, they're like, oh, hey, look, here's our models. Everything's open source. Take it, American founders, and build your own models. Use our stuff, right? But they're kind of like, oh, it's not as good. I'll pay Anthropic. I'll pay OpenAI. So that's pretty much what's happening.
What's your view on the chip race though there as well? Because I've seen, obviously they had this OpenAI deal with AMD, and Nvidia's still, it feels like they've got an unbelievable demand for chips themselves. But is there anyone else you think is going to come through here and have any sort of place? I know Google makes their own chips, right? Or have their own internal.
Yeah. So let me give you the lay of the land. You have Nvidia, top dog, been in this game for decades at this point. They know their craft so well, and they have the best designed GPUs, the best designed chips. If you want to train the best models, you use Nvidia, right? And China, as of about a year ago, were technically, when you compare their chips versus NVIDIA's chips, around 5 years behind. Now, a month ago, China made actually not a month ago, 2 weeks ago, China made a pretty bold headline. They announced, the government, they announced that they didn't want any Chinese companies buying GPUs from Jensen anymore. They put a ban. They were like, you don't need it. And they pushed forward Alibaba and a few other, Huawei as well, who is famous for like their cell phones, for their GPUs. They both released 2 brand new GPU designs at the time that Chinese government made this announcement. And so we compared them to NVIDIA's GPUs. And now they're only about a year behind. That is crazy advancement in such a short period of time. So the assumption there would be that the Chinese GPUs will eventually be able to be as good, if not better, than NVIDIA's GPUs. Now, if that happens, and with China's ability to scale manufacturing, they're the manufacturing kings, right? That's slightly worrisome, which is why we see on the American side onshoring of manufacturing for GPUs. NVIDIA's investing a ton in the US to create like factories to do that, number one. Number two, as you mentioned, Google manufactures their own GPUs. They're actually called TPUs. And they've been doing this for a while, and it's arguably the reason why their models are so good in making scientific discoveries, right? And the other third thing is probably why we see OpenAI designing their own GPUs and chips as well. So I think America's behind right now, but I wouldn't bet against America just going crazy at scaling over the next year.
And obviously, we've seen basically these GPUs are now becoming almost like a balance sheet asset as well.
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw that they are being, for the XAI deal, which happened recently, they were seemingly used to, and they can be recalled,
Yes.
but they're taking, what is it, a huge stake in XAI
Yeah.
just for the use of GPU.
Yeah. So that I'm glad you brought that up. So Jensen Huang of NVIDIA announced that they were investing $2 billion in XAI. But what was so unique about this deal was he wasn't giving them money. He was agreeing to give them $2 billion worth of GPUs. And if XAI fails to pay for them over the next, I think it's like 3 years, they can lay claim to the GPUs that they had already given them. So instead of equity, it's GPUs. And so GPUs are becoming this kind of like reserve currency, this kind of like influencing factor with all these deals. And it's not just limited to NVIDIA and XAI. The deal that you mentioned earlier that OpenAI signed with AMD, it's the same thing. AMD needs to deliver the GPUs. But if OpenAI doesn't pay up, then they owe AMD back their GPUs. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, it's you only notice this when you see the press releases from all these sort of deals, but they're either spoken about in terms of GPUs or power. It feels like these are now the 2 base assets when it comes to all of these sort of deals, which is Elon Musk talking about it actually just in relation to Bitcoin. Like the way to value a lot of things in society now is just like the power that is directed towards their production.
Absolutely.
Right. And Bitcoin is one of those assets, therefore it has its value. And it's kind of very reductive at the same time, but power and GPUs are the 2 things powering the economy.
I have never been more confident that the future of store of value will be digital. I've never been more confident. It's all being laid out right in front of you. What is the most invested thing this year? Oh, it's AI. No, it's not AI. It's compute. It's energy. Right? And what do you think kids in the future are going to be investing in? They're not going to buy gold bars. What do you think the AIs are going to be using? It's not gold, right? It's going to be some form of digital asset, some form of store of value. So it may not happen this Friday. We may dump over the weekend, but you know we have time. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like when I don't get embarrassed by any of these sort of wobbles. I do think we're in this sort of period where 4-year cyclers of us are coming up against, let's say, extended cyclers, and that's going to be the battle until I would reckon end of November. and maybe middle
Yeah.
of December, and then I think we get a bit of a Santa Claus rally. But when you see what's happening in the unbelievable power of this AI rally, and it doesn't really feel like it's letting up, or if it will, don't really know what will be the thing that shakes it. It'll have to be some sort of black swan
Yeah.
thing. It feels as though the value of crypto is going to be very much tied to these two over the medium term. I watch. So if you're not following Ejaaz, he does a really good podcast on YouTube called Limitless, which you should go check out. But I've seen you do a number of different things about, well, videos on where AI is touching in terms of industries. I saw you do one on defense recently about Anduril. Obviously, we've just spoken about healthcare, but everyone talks about the Magnificent Seven, and you said you thought concentration is going up. Is there any other companies you're kind of looking at who are kind of on that second tier, maybe in robotics or defense or medical research, which are doing anything which you think is kind of interesting, or is it really just the Mag 7?
I mean, so it's kind of like asking, hey, what altcoins should I invest in versus like what are kind of like the BTCs?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I know that's what you're asking. Yeah. So just like disclaimer, and this is genuinely what I think. I'm not trying to be like, some kind of safety person here. I still think some of the best investments are these Mag 7 things. And the irony comes because literally anyone you talk to is like, oh yeah, but I'm buying the top of these companies, right? But what they don't see is that these companies are doing insane shit. Like as you said, what happens when Google stops becoming just a search company and suddenly they're like the top pharmaceutical company creating like the number one drugs and suppliers of those? Like how much would you value Google when it comes to that? What happens when they cure cancer? Like what are you going to do then? Like how much are they worth, right? So a disclaimer with that, Tesla is the same thing. Like everyone's like, oh, they're a car company. No, they are a robot / computer company. Their cars are the computers. That's the way you should kind of look at it, right? When it comes to like what other types of companies, honestly, like any kind of energy, I'm not going to name names here, but I think when it comes to like energy production companies, raw materials, nuclear fusion type things, is a really good bet in my opinion, especially over the next kind of like 5 to 10 years. Nuclear is typically ready to set in around 2030 is where like the studies kind of estimate, but that will likely be accelerated. The other companies, as you said, are defense. Anduril, you can't really kind of get your hands on that right now. It's a private company, but they are making like crazy strides when it comes to like the VR side of AI. So I would say like those two bets are really cool. And then biotech is the last one. Biotech has kind of been a meme for the last decade because they're like they tease little studies, but they never really scale it out. I think AI is going to change that, and keeping an eye on that industry will be super important.
Yeah, I feel like the defense side of stuff has been
Popping, yeah, drones.
Yeah, there's a lot, you can still see that's where a lot of the VCs are kind of moving into as well. So I think that you're going to see a lot of stuff there on the robot or humanoid robot, let's say, stuff. It still feels like Tesla's the most obvious public bet, right? Everything else is kind of small. Yeah.
Figure is the other one. Again, private company. You've got Unitree, which I think IPO'd at $7 billion on the Chinese stock market. Two really amazing robot companies. But yeah, the leaders are still Tesla and Optimus.
It's interesting because I was in Singapore for the conference, and in even Korea before that. And a year ago, I feel like there was a lot more talk about AI meets crypto. And this time it wasn't really about that, which I thought was slightly surprising. I thought we'd kind of moved on to stable coins and neobanks, but the idea of agents didn't really come up that much in the sort of conversations. You feel that from your side as well? Do you think that the AI space is has drifted away from crypto in the last year, despite it felt like there was going to be some tie-ups?
Yeah, undoubtedly. And I say that as one of the largest spokespeople around that during the time. Ironically, it is probably the best time. It's not probably, it is the best time to be keeping your eye on that particular overlap between those two industries. The reason why I say this is I'm confident this AI agent stuff, or AI agents in general, are going to be the number one ways that people interact with the internet or the digital world. You're not going to be typing prompts. You're going to be talking to something. You're going to be talking to an AI, right? And it's not just going to be a generalized AI that is like, hey, that forgets who you are and says, hey, how may I help you? It's going to be like, what's up, Mando? I know that you did A, B, and C yesterday. I've got you, and I've sent you this, this, and this for this morning. It's going to be something that knows you intimately, right? That's an agent. So the only question is, when do these things come into production? When did they become good enough? And when will they start becoming useful for me in my crypto world, right? Managing my positions, risk management, giving me good trade advice, and doing arbitrages in many different ways in your crypto world. I would probably see that happening sometime next year, because right now the agents that OpenAI, Google, Meta have been producing are kind of like slightly better than chatbots. They can send emails and calendar notifications, but they don't really go beyond that. The agents that are really killing it are all coding agents. So if you need some type of an agent to build you an app in real time or build you a feature in real time, that can be applied to crypto really well. And I feel like there are a number of repeatable things that people build in crypto. They build in the EVM. They want to build smart contracts. That can probably be automated at this point by an agent. But I still think we have about a year out, or within a year, before we see some wider consumer applications within crypto and AI.
Yeah, it's maybe not even just crypto, but I feel as though whenever everyone speaks about the applications of AI at the moment, they're normally around the stuff that you just mentioned. It's like medical research, but actually finance. Is there any ones that are any of these Mag 7 that are focusing on like trading or like investing in financial assets, or is that just seen as kind of beneath this AI class of we're trying to change the world? Because I just don't see that much of it. And I don't happening on the private side with hedge funds building their own models completely. And maybe we just don't see them because you wouldn't want to see them. But I've just been surprised that world has suddenly I don't hear about it as much.
So to be clear, if you built a magical AI that could make you a hell of a lot of money on the stock market, that stuff is going to be private. You're never going to release that publicly. Like
maybe Citadel has.
Exactly. Well, that was going to be my second point, which is yes, these AI agents that trade or give you trade advice exist. They're just internal at all these big companies. You don't think they care about this? Of course they care about it. They want information delivered to them in real time and execution. AI can do all of that, right? So they've trained it on their own proprietary data sets, their own proprietary models, and they have a superhuman. Their quants are replaced by a bunch of AI stuff, or they're enhanced by a bunch of AI stuff. So that's it on the financial side. Now, on the consumer available financial side of things, it may not be something that trades directly for you, but it's going to be something that makes you smarter about the market movements in general. I've seen two cases of this so far. Number one, Perplexity. It is a company that is kind of like a AI version of Google search. It's really cool. They have their own browser, blah, blah, blah. They released a feature this week, which is called insider trading, which tracks a bunch of the top government officials and a number of other industry figures to see just how they kind of trade, because these are like government officials that trade or that need to report their earnings. And it's nothing major, but it now helps you be informed with some of these larger movements that you can maybe make a smarter, trade in your time. The other thing that I've seen happen this week is someone has got the pro models from Anthropic, OpenAI, and a few others, Google's Gemini as well, XAI as well, and they've given it a bunch of money. And they've said, like, let's trade conservatively and let's see how you do. All of those models, bar one, is up over the week. And they ironically took a big short position, I think a few days earlier, which has paid off for them like pretty massively. Yeah.
Well, if you hear anyone building the super intelligence of crypto trading, just let me know. I'm sure you'll be the first person to hear about it.
I'll DM you.
And anyway, we'll get into some questions here. We'll probably bring it back to crypto for some of these questions, but if you have any, please ask them on the site, or if you're watching on YouTube or on X. First question was, any insights? This is from Sovereign BTC on X. Any insights to who might have blown up over the last week in crypto? We did both speak about. We were waiting to hear a body float to the water. There was some talk about a couple of liquid funds blowing up on Binance. It would be impossible for people not to have blown up with those. Mm-hmm. It does feel as though Binance, firstly, gave a huge amount of refunds. It seemed, we don't actually know how many. They've publicly said they gave around 400 million, and it seems as though it could be into the billions, in my opinion, because this was a bit of an internal failure on a lot of what they were doing. So I heard a couple of funds got caught up in that, and potentially even market makers lost a lot because they had long short portfolios, or they were hedging their spot with shorts, but those shorts got stopped out early on things like Hyperliquid. And but no one has actually, none of the top market makers, they've all come out and said, no, we're actually okay. So it feels as though maybe it was market makers that got hurt, but they weren't stopped out, and maybe the liquid funds that got really badly burnt maybe were made whole. Did you hear of anyone else?
No, I just heard of Wintermute, but that might be because, everyone hates them on crypto Twitter for some reason.
They've been pretty vocal actually this week. They did come out and say, I think they got hurt a little bit on some of their stuff, but there is a world also where Wintermute made a lot of money because they were short. If they were short a lot of these coins in perps and long spot, some of the perps were trading at such a low level that you could say that as long as it was on a centralized exchange and they could execute, they probably didn't lose that much money. But so I think it was a mixture of people, but no one massive. This hasn't taken out an exchange as far as we're aware. There was some worry about a couple of centralized exchanges, but by and large, there seems to have been users of crypto rather than like the big trading houses or anything like that. Alan on the RV website, are we now transitioning to fucked up October? To be honest, October to me looks like it could be a little bit choppy now. I was bullish that on this reversal that we were going to go back up to kind of all-time high, and that was one of those classic things where everyone gets flushed. Now I think it could be a bit choppy. I think it could be choppy until late November, mid December. I think then we get a bit of a Santa Claus rally, and the reason for that is what I said earlier in the show. It was Mike Novogratz here, I remember now, who I was speaking to, who runs Galaxy, and he was saying, look, we see supply, and it's all from OG Bitcoiners, and I think that is still a view here, that this is it. 4-year cycle's done. If you wanted to sell, you've been selling in July, August, September, and now October. And now we're having this wobble in October. I think some people will go like, right, actually, I'm out. I saw a couple of takes. I think Chris Bernist, who's quite a well-known TT account, basically said that too. And I think we get some choppiness. I think by the end of November, maybe we hopefully see some talk about the market structure bill, the Genius Act, that sort of stuff come through. And I also think that that worry about the 4-year cycle won't be there. As long as there's no black swan event that happens between now and the end of November, I don't think that there would have been a reason for crypto to underperform, and the 4-year cycle will not be a thing by December. So I reckon we'll catch up around then. What do you think? Do you think we're gonna? I mean, you're not really a short-term guy, I feel like, but do you have a view on the rest of October?
I think it's the chop is a fair take, but I think we're much higher than where we are right now by the end of October is my take. I don't think waiting until late November. I think it'll happen earlier. Basically, I think we'll get back to all-time highs before then. Mark my words.
One thing I would say is that we're already at extreme fear. The crypto feeding group index, we're at extreme fear at $107,000.
Leverage is wiped out. Yep.
That's quite a nice spot to be in, I would say.
Yep.
So can't really get much more fearful than extreme fear. So
there were too many people on the timeline, Mando, that were like, oh yeah, God, I'm hurt, but I'll add some here. This is definitely the bottom. And now I don't see any of them on the timeline, which is typically when that bottom actually is.
One thing I would say to viewers is like the key for the market is the 50-week moving average on Bitcoin. That has been respected the whole way from 15K. Every single time we've touched it, we've bounced. It's at $102,000, 101.8 at the moment. We touched close to it this morning, and then we bounced. And we may touch it again, but that level, that 102, just go check it out. Every chart will be able to show you a 50-week moving average on Bitcoin. That's the key level. If we break that and we go below, then a lot of people will say cycle could be close to being over. If we respect that and we keep bouncing off it, I think the cycle's still going, and I think we're in a good spot. Okay, so next question. Does Ukraine have rare earth minerals? I think that's quite an easy answer. Yeah, I think they do. I don't know how explored they are, but that is explicitly part of the deal between the US and Ukraine for defense there. So obviously that's going to be important with the with China potentially restricting some of that. Jordan on YouTube, what are the key builder incentives you see driving the next wave apps beyond perps/spots? Interesting. Look, I think a lot of crypto, if you boil down to it, is ways to get outsized returns, whether it's meme coins or perps or RWAs. The ones that seem to have the best product market fit is this like 10x return option for it. So like if we're going to do RWAs, it's going to be like loot boxes for Pokemon cards. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the boring stuff. I still think that's going to be an underlying trend across everything here. It's just like crypto is still going to be a place for people to come, and they want to make a 10x. And that's why it naturally gets drawn to memes and perps and just like the more risky bits of finance in general. I think that could happen on crypto pretty well. And to be honest, it's one of the best times to build one of those apps in crypto because you can earn revenue and the tokens kind of work. So I think revenue, and then I guess AI, I guess is what you're going to say here, Ejaaz. But yeah, what's your take?
Well, yes and no. I was actually going to say something else, which is I think more of these financial primitives, perps, trading, blah, 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 it all sounds boring when we frame it like that. Yeah, I think you've got to consider the applications that are going to be built on top of this, which is things like prediction markets, things like being able to trade traditional equities and stocks on chain. I think we're going to see more marrying between crypto native assets and trading and perps with the TradFi markets, right? With the Reddit Wall Street bet traders, right? And I think that's going to be net pretty awesome. Robinhood's leading that way. Coinbase is leading that way. A bunch of DEXs are now leading that way. I think that's going to create a really unique ecosystem of different users because it's just not going to be the same 30,000 people trading a hot ball of money. It's going to be different traders, different types of capital with different types of risk preferences, and that kind of changes the game a bit. It allows flexibility to build a new type of app.
I would agree with that. I think prediction markets seem like an interesting one. Again, I still think it's at that risk of. I mean, I've seen crypto Twitter sort of influencers now. They're like all in on what Jerome Powell's going to say on a speech. Like they're just giving up on altcoin. Just like this is what we're doing today. And I think that speaks a lot. Like you wouldn't actually know that even crypto has to power that, but we're going to see crypto now become the payment rails for a lot of this sort of a lot of different bits of finance and probably just broader like culture. And I think we're going to see that will take over a lot of, I think, even the content of this space as well. Okay, Alan. I don't know where this is coming from, but do you think the marginal trade has moved into AI, rares, energy microcaps from crypto? Seems like that's now where all the action is for new alts. Look, I think it's been a tough year for crypto on the rel val. Gold is up 60%. Bitcoin's up 12%. Altcoins not had I mean, they're up, I would say, but it's definitely a world now of competing interest. What do you think about that, Ejaaz? Do you think crypto's being left behind here, or it's going to catch up?
I think this is a good take if it was 5 months ago. I think now it is the consensus take, and it's already pumped so much. It would probably make sense if there was some sort of diversification that we might see, where people kind of maybe capitulate on some of their positions in gold and silver. By the way, silver never reached all-time highs for like a year prior to like the last couple of weeks, right? Um, there are people queuing up to buy physical gold in Vietnam and a bunch of other pictures I've seen from other countries. That's typically toppy type behavior. I might be coping right now, fully admitting that, but yeah, I would say we're getting close to some form of transfer between the gold holders and Bitcoin and other assets.
I do think gold is a bit toppy here, but I think it's a long-term trade. I think it's tough to be bullish on Bitcoin and not be bullish on gold. But I do think this run, I mean, gold did run like this before, and when it ran to 3K, it was like, oh my God, it's going parabolic. And then it kind of chopped around at 3K for a little bit for about six months, and then came back. And it feels like we could be in this chop period now for gold, maybe for 2 months, where everyone's piled in. But
what did Bitcoin do after it started chopping?
That's when Bitcoin moved. That's when Bitcoin moved. So we need the chop. We need the chop of Bitcoin.
A bit of hopium for the listeners. I think I saw that it was roughly 30 to 60 days after gold has kind of like started pumping, which puts us in early November. Just a bit of hopium.
Yeah, we definitely need a bit of that today. Bitcoin has been bouncing during the show, so that's good, but it has not been a great period here. And you have Peter Schiff dunking on crypto at the moment. Not the best situation.
He was right. He was right.
He was right. All right. Hood on YouTube says, Ejaaz, what's the view on Bitcoin miners / AI data centers? I think it is been a good run, but seems like more hyperscaler deals are probably coming.
Yes.
What's your view on miners pivoting to AI?
Yeah, I think a bunch of miners will do it. They're profit seeking at the end of the day, and they have the hardware to just point in the right direction that's going to make them the most money. Ironically, that's how NVIDIA kind of started. They started being like a GPU manufacturer, and then they were like, oh, this stuff is really good for gaming. And then they were like, oh, hang on, this stuff is really good for mining. And then they were like, oh, let's point this all at AI. And the miners themselves, they're technically people that just buy this hardware to serve a specific use case. I think too many people think like, oh, they're married to crypto. No, they're married to making some type of money. So, in one way that might lead to capitulation, and they might point it all at hyperscaler stuff. One thing I will say is the hyperscaler stuff isn't as simple as I'll buy a bunch of GPUs and I'll offer it to people to train. No, there's a whole thing around network architecture, designing the mining rigs, cooling systems, proprietary ownership. It is super, super messy. I have a bunch of friends that are working in that industry. It's not as simple as I'll buy a bunch of GPUs. But the other thing I'll say is if a bunch of miners defect and go to AI, they'll be replaced. It's all pricing economics at the end of the day. If crypto ends up pumping, hey, now it's profitable, and I want to now mine crypto again. So it's a nothing burger in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember when NVIDIA said we're switching everything to AI, and crypto bros were dunking on them, being like, "That's a terrible move. That's a terrible move."
Great buy. Now the best buy opportunity. Yep.
That's crypto for you. Yeah, it went on to do whatever 50x since then, probably. Okay, that's it. OSF came in actually and said the REKT Vision Friday curse remains undefeated. It is true. Every Friday, they just don't want us to have a nice weekend. At least we're bouncing a little bit now, but let's see where we are next Friday. Ejaaz is saying all-time highs by the end of October. I think I heard something along those lines.
2 weeks from now, I'm going to bet that you have a smile on your face on your Friday.
I hope so.
I think so. Yeah.
All right, Raul, let's book him in. Raul only comes on when it's all-time high, so maybe let's book him in, produce. Let's get him back. Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot for tuning in, everyone. We'll do this again in a month with Ejaaz. Thanks, obviously, Ejaaz, your great takes. Community loves you. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yep.
All right, guys, we'll be back next week, same time as usual, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. British summertime, the last one before the clocks changes. Have a great week, guys.
See ya.
Binance is the world's #1 crypto exchange. Over 275 million users already trust their world-class security. Binance makes starting crypto as simple as it should be. Whether learning about crypto on Binance Academy or browsing hundreds of assets and viewing your newly created portfolio in a clear, easy-to-track dashboard, Binance helps you go at your own pace. For the hardcore traders, Binance Pro opens industry-leading services for trading professionals with fully bespoke trading products, along with a suite of white-glove services for VIP and institutional clients. Need support? 24/7 customer service is on hand whenever you need it. And with some of the lowest fees and deepest liquidity in the market, it's no surprise over 285 million users trust Binance for everything crypto. Download Binance today and get started in minutes. Binance is not available in certain countries, including the U.S. Check its terms for more.